All right, so this will be available on our YouTube website for folks that want to view it later. Thank you everyone for joining us. So this presentation is on understanding local government structure, responsibilities, and priorities. My name is Erin Landis, pronouns she and her. I'm with Wissahickon and Trails. I'm the water programs manager there. We are a nonprofit. We're based in Ambler, and we connect land, water, and people in the Wissahickon watershed. So I am delighted to have Susan Mairov from PEC, and she's going to introduce herself and her organization in this presentation, and also Tali Macarthur from Power here. So they are going to be doing the presentation. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. As we have questions, please put them in the chat box. We hope to have a good amount of time at the end to answer questions. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over. I think to Tali, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
So good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad to see some folks. Most of you seem to have your cameras off, at least the people on my screen, but however you are comfortable this evening. As Erin said, my name is Tali Macarthur. I'm Program Manager for Watershed Outreach for the Pennsylvania Organization for Watersheds and Rivers, which is an affiliate organization of the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, also known as PEC or PEC. And this is a presentation we've given on a number of occasions. It started out as a 3-part training. So we've distilled down 3 parts into 1 part for this evening for you. Yeah, I'm going to just advance here and turn it over to Sue to introduce herself, and then she'll kick it back over to me for a few minutes.
Okay. Thanks, Tali. Thanks, Erin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Mairov. I am the Watersheds Program Director for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. And as Tali mentioned, Power is an affiliate organization of PEC. We are a statewide nonprofit environmental organization. Founded a little over 50 years. We celebrated our 50th anniversary back in 2020. And my program area that I lead is our Watersheds program, but PEC also works in areas of trail and greenway and recreation, and also in climate and energy policy. So we have a bunch of different things that we are involved with across the state. And we value our partnerships and collaboration for this work. I work out of our Philadelphia office, and we have several other offices around the state: Pittsburgh, Luzerne in northeastern PA, State College near where Tali is, and also, am I missing one? Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, right? I mentioned Philadelphia. Okay, I want to make sure. Oh my gosh. So we are real thrilled to be here. And as Tali mentioned, we started, this was a 3-part series, and we have consolidated the information into our presentation tonight, but we look forward to engaging with you a little bit and having some opportunity for questions. We're going to throw a lot of material out, but I know as stream keepers that you guys may know some of the information. So just let us know if you have any questions. You can, I guess, ask through the chat, and we'll stop at a couple points as well to take a breath and if you have any questions for that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tali to get us started with, I think, a couple poll questions, right?
And I was just going to say real quick, Susan gave an introduction to PEC, and I'll just tell you just a little bit about Power, the Pennsylvania Organization for Watersheds and Rivers. That organization is committed to empowering citizen champions and uniting people, communities to protect, restore, explore, and enjoy recreational opportunities along Pennsylvania's rivers, creeks, streams, and wetlands. And as some of you know, Power hosts a statewide conference every 2 years, and we host regional workshops for watershed organizations in the opposing years. We have a wonderful website with really great tools and resources, a calendar of events. So check us out for more information. It's pawatersheds.org. And seeing as how we are working from home and it's the evening, you may see crazy kids waving at you behind me, but hopefully not too often. So I'm just going to really quickly review the learning objectives for this evening, and hope that Sue and I are going to do our very best to cover all of these in this time that we have together. So I always say that Pennsylvania, I think, wins the award for the most complex local government structure in the 50 United States. But we're going to learn a little bit about those and their powers and their limitations. We will understand how and why local government land use and planning decisions have immediate and critical impacts on water. So a lot of what happens to our water bodies is determined by decisions that are made locally. We'll understand the roles and perspectives and priorities of local officials, become familiar with some of the tools that they use to make these planning decisions. And then towards the end, I'm going to kick it mostly over to Sue, but then at the end, you'll see me again. And we're going to talk a little bit about local government priorities and considering especially how to align them with our water quality, watershed, environmental values and conservation values. So yeah, we're going to start this off with, we try to make this as interactive as we can. So we are going to launch a poll and hopefully this works. Should it not work, or should you not be able to see it, depending on what kind of device you're watching us on, I'm going to put the questions also on the slide and you can respond in the chat. So go ahead, Erin.
All right, so you should have seen a poll pop up on your screen. And any of the participants, if you would like to unmute and let me know if you're having issues with that. All right, I see some folks participating. That's great.
Oh, sorry. I realized we've given these presentations in various watersheds, so I can see how maybe one of these won't apply.
Some people might be interested in the Chesapeake Whip. You never know.
That's right. For those of you that enjoy eating your blue crabs.
All right, we're going to close it in 10 more seconds. Most of you have answered, which is great.
Oh, and I see a few people in the chat too, so great.
Awesome.
A few others there. Great.
All right.
All right, well, we just kind of do that too. Not sure if you shared the results or who can see them. There we go. So great, we have people, a lot of people have attended a public hearing or a public meeting. We've had people that have even commented on proposed rules. One of you is a member of your local EAC. That's wonderful. So great, we just wanted to kind of share that, give you an opportunity. It helps us know our audience a little bit better, and also to show our appreciation for your engagement. So thanks. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to turn my camera off and kick it over to Sue.
Okay, thanks, Tali. Let me see here. I still see it on my screen. Let me see. There we go. All right, thanks everyone for participating in that first poll. I am now going to move on to our first section. I do want to mention that I forgot when I was busy chattering on about PEC. I'm also I wear several different hats. I am on the Environmental Advisory Council for Abington Township, and I also sit on the board of the Tocconé Frankfurt Watershed Partnership. So I too have a lot of different hats that I wear, outside of my work at PEC. And we are always thrilled to work with lots of partners, including, of course, Wissahickon Trails and TTF and Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust and our friends at Darby Cobb. So I see a lot of you from those different places where we actively have a lot of great projects going on. So tonight we're going to talk, as Tali mentioned, about local government in Pennsylvania. And what we want to start with is basically sort of some intro stuff about why the decisions that are made locally are so important to the work that we do, especially related to improving our health of our local streams. So Tali, if you can move to the next screen. Oops, no, one back. Yeah, here we go. So I like to start this presentation with this slide. It's like, this is what our local municipalities in Pennsylvania can do. Tali mentioned how complex our local government structure is, and we'll get into that in a bit. But our local governments have an enormous amount of power to regulate land use, and that's a really key power that they have. Not many states have that sort of power vested at the local level. We do here in Pennsylvania, and municipalities can do a lot more than just control future land use. They can also use their what we refer to as sort of police powers to protect agricultural, historic, and natural resources. They can focus and prioritize preservation of things like forested areas, wetlands, aquifers, floodplains. And they also, of course, have the ability to regulate stormwater management or stormwater and stormwater discharges. And that's done through many different ways in our state, including through a permit that they have to obtain that is required under the Clean Water Act. So that's just setting the stage here. Yep, you can move to the next one now. So I think as stream keepers, you probably know a lot of this sort of basic information. Why are land use decisions so important? Because we know there's a direct correlation between land use intensity and water quality. And as you move from pristine or undeveloped areas to more developed, we have more intensity of land use. Our impervious surface, or that hard surface, increases with that land intensity. And that also leads to more water quality problems, because we're preventing water from soaking into the ground where it falls. It's a basic relationship. The more you build, the more you cover and create hard surfaces, impervious cover, the more you are having a potential impact on water quality. And if we move on to the next slide, you may be familiar with the stoplight colored graph here. This is that relationship based on many studies over the years between the percent impervious cover and stream degradation. Tali, I think if you press the little, if you hit enter, it should there's the arrow. Okay, so I just want to, oh, not yet. So as you move into more impervious cover, we start seeing changes in stream values. So if you get to about 10%, we don't typically see a lot of impairment. We don't see problems in terms of stream water quality. But as we move past that 10% mark and go into that more impervious cover, we start to see impacts to our streams. And when I say impact, we are talking about things like pollution, impacts from development, impacts from higher levels of sediment and nutrients, things that are very typical around this region. And as you get to that sort of 25% mark, you are then seeing degradation. You're seeing that this increase in pollution then makes that stream unhealthy. It makes it unable to support some of the basic uses that they're designated to support in our state, that relates to the types of fish that can live in a stream. So if it can't support the fish, it's considered impaired, and that's a problem. And it's a very big issue here in our region. And I know as stream keepers, you do a lot of monitoring and look at these kinds of clues to find out if there's some issues with the streams. And so, but here I just wanted to show that there's a direct correlation between land use intensity and stream water quality. Okay, you can move on to the next, I think. I believe we have another poll, because that's what it says. So Erin, I'm going to ask you to talk a little, bring our next poll up, and the land use impact poll. So we really wanted to know from your perspective, especially as a stream keeper, what do you think has the most significant negative impact on local resources?
And yeah, the instructions are to select the top 2 or 3 choices.
And also I noted that you can also move the little gray bar and maybe see some options that you wouldn't see. I don't know how it's appearing on everybody's screen, but.
Oh, right. Yeah, you can go to the right and move that bar down to see more options. Yep. Thanks, Tali and Erin.
So we're getting some engagement with this. This is great. Thank you. We have a few more people that might participate. I'll let it go for another 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just saw that comment come up about salt. I know that's a real big issue here. That's great. Thanks. So we're seeing, I think you all have, looks like the highest one here are the highways. Our transportation infrastructure very much contributes to the amount of impervious surface, certainly. And of course, in a densely developed area, you're going to have a lot more of the buildings, but you're also going to have a lot more roads. So and parking lots. The suburban sprawl, large ag areas. I'm just going to scroll down here. Okay, so also we see some previously mined areas. That's certainly up in the northeastern part of the state. And there was did someone put something in the chat that I can't actually read it right? Winter salt. Right, that was the salt. Sorry, great, perfect. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. So yeah, all these things will contribute to the water quality of our local streams. Okay, so let's I'll show you some examples. And then I'm going to ask, let's see if you know exactly what watershed I'm using as an example. So we're showing about sort of the impact of development, and here you can see what we mean by imperviousness. We have a lot of imperviousness. This particular watershed actually starts in a parking lot, and what you're seeing on that left side with the people standing there is actually tributary, and it's been culverted because of flooding issues. And you also see on the right side of that picture the exposed sewer infrastructure as well. So these are really high indicators of urbanized streams. This is what you see a lot in our suburban areas here in suburban Philadelphia. You can go to the next slide, which is just again what happens when we have this issue of more impervious cover. We have this problem of our streams not being able to handle water, stormwater events and rain events. And what you see here is illustrated here is the bank full, where the condition of the stream gets so high that it overflows. And of course you get flooding. And that's because we are getting a lot of storms coming in very quickly, and our streams aren't able to handle the water and the velocity and the flow. So you get this the flooding issues. And then you see here more examples of this velocity problem, the stream bank erosions, the infrastructure being undermining infrastructure. This is all stormwater runoff that's traveling too quickly, coming too fast, and overwhelming our streams. So it's really an issue, especially in these urbanized streams here in the region, in the suburban Philly region, but in other areas as well. And I think, I wanted to also point out that the decisions, again, related to land use have impacts on other natural resources, and how your community regulates these types of natural resources is important. So there are ways to regulate things like steep slopes, prime farmland soils, whether or not your municipality protects its riparian corridors, woodlands, wetlands, and floodplains. These are all related to our condition for our streams. We need to protect all these different natural resources, and many of our communities can do that through their local codes and ordinances. Okay, you can move on. Again, if you have any questions, I will move to this material kind of quickly. Second part of this presentation tonight is to just explain Pennsylvania's local government structure and some basic powers. And again, as reiterating that Pennsylvania has a pretty complicated local government structure, and I'm going to try to explain it to you through a couple of different slides that are going to come up in terms of defining what actually local government is in Pennsylvania. And you may be surprised that local governments include a variety of different entities. Municipalities are local governments, counties are local governments, municipal authorities are considered local governments in our state. The county conservation districts are considered a local government, and school districts are considered local government. So it's not just your municipality, there's many different levels that are classified as local government here in our state. So starting with sort of the broader picture, we have counties, right? And we know that all citizens in our state do live in a county. Just a couple of fun facts on this slide that we know, like Lycoming is the largest. Philadelphia actually is a county all on its own, but it's the smallest, but it's also got the most population. We have 67 total in the state, and they're governed by three county commissioners. And some other fun facts, of course, Philadelphia, Bucks, and Chester, one of the first counties established in our state. You can move on. So counties have specific functions in our state. Our local governments are enabled through our state code, and counties are authorized to administer several types of human service programs. They can conduct land use planning, and they can operate county jails. They can also pass ordinances. They can assess property. I think that's probably one you're very familiar with. And they have the job of registering voters as well. And our Constitution and county code really do provide a lot of this sort of authority for them to do all these types of things. So when you think about counties and all the different services they provide. So talking again about some other types of local government in our state are the county conservation districts, and they were created back in the 40s to improve soil and water conservation. And they provide a lot of technical assistance. They review plans and permits for erosion and sedimentation control, also known as ENS. And they manage certain grant programs which support restoration efforts for our watersheds and waterways. All of our counties have a conservation district except Philadelphia. And again, it's a really valuable county government and local government that you should be familiar with. But again, we'll move on to our municipalities in our state. And this is an interesting graphic. It's showing all of the municipalities in the state of Pennsylvania, all 2,560 of them. We have a lot of local municipalities. And if you think about the fact that every single one of them has the power to regulate their own land use, that's how you think about the complexity in our state. Our most common type of municipality is a second-class township. And all of these various types of municipalities are governed by different types of elected officials. I'm going to run through those very quickly, starting with our most densely populated areas called cities. We have cities of three different classes. First and second class cities have a mayor and a home rule charter. So Philadelphia is considered a first class, Pittsburgh and Scranton a second class township. A lot of this is related to density and population. And then we have some third class cities as well. And they have a little bit of a different, again, local government structure. They may have a mayor with 4 commission members, or they might have a elected city controller. And they could be a mayor council form, or they can have a council manager form. You don't need to really worry about all this. It's just to show you that there are all of these different types of, just in the cities, or they could be managed differently and governed differently. And it's always great to know if how your local government is structured and how the decisions are made. So moving on from cities, I believe we'll go to boroughs. Again, we're kind of going in order of density. So boroughs are generally smaller than cities, both geographically and in population. And each has a mayor and either 3, 5, 7, or 9 council people. They are the second largest type of municipality in Pennsylvania, with over 950 of them in the state of Pennsylvania. So lots of boroughs. Now, townships. Townships, again, are the most populous form of government in our state, and they are also the oldest form of structured governance in the entire United States. So township is been around for many centuries in the US. So we have 2 types of townships, first class and second class. Again, these are based on density. First class townships are typically higher density or higher population, and they have a board ranging from 7 to 15 commissioners. And second class townships, again, this is the most populous type, the 1,456 in our state, typically will have 3 township supervisors. So that's really important. As I mentioned earlier, in Abington Township, we have 15 commissioners. We are a first class township. Okay, you can move on to our fun fact quiz. So we just wanted to know if anyone knows the answer to this particular question. And if you do, you could just maybe put it in the chat for us. So it's Bloomsburg is the only incorporated something in Pennsylvania. Does anybody know? Does anybody want to take a guess? You got to take a guess. I am seeing that is correct. It's a town. It's the only incorporated town in Pennsylvania. I talked about, now it's a little trick question because I didn't mention towns. I mentioned townships and boroughs and cities, but so it was a little bit of a trick question, but that is true. It's the only town incorporated in our state. Okay, a couple things I wanted to mention as I run through this next section. You know, the functions of our municipalities, again, everything in our state is enabled through our state codes, but our municipalities do provide our police, fire, road maintenance, water supply, stormwater management. Some actually have authorities that do the sewage treatment and collection, trash collection. There's, of course, they also may have local planning and zoning. So lots of different functions for our municipalities in this state. And some of that is provided through their in-house staff, and some of that is contracted out. We will talk a little bit about that in a bit. You can go to a couple of examples I just wanted to sort of talk about. So you know that municipalities do maintain many miles of roads, and their maintenance practices can certainly significantly impact watersheds and water quality. And we just, and you all had raised this issue, you know, how much salt they apply to the roads, for example, whether or not they use vegetated swales. Do they have dirt and gravel roads? That's a big issue in many of our more rural communities. And are they properly maintained? Are they properly cared for? So these decisions, just in terms of how they maintain local roads, can have an impact on our water quality. You can move on to the next. So from another thing that I think is really interesting and important to understand is that many local governments may also maintain parks, open space. Some of those parks may have streams that run through them, and so that their practices on those particular properties is very important. So if they have a buffer along that stream, we love to encourage that it's protected with appropriate vegetation. Do they apply herbicide or pesticides to these areas? You know, and I have a story here that in a local community in Union County, for example, a maintenance employee was using diesel fuel to kill weeds in the park. I mean, that's a horrible example, but you know, this can happen. So we really want to make sure that the public lands that are maintained by our communities are done in a nice, responsible way. So a lot of that comes down to some education also, of course. So in summary for this section that we just went through, that just always remember that local decisions do matter. Those decisions on land use and how to protect and what they do on their own properties is very important. And as I mentioned, in our state of Pennsylvania, our municipalities are enabled to manage, regulate, and plan for their own communities. And of course, we always like to mention that there is a role for you as a concerned citizen who lives in this municipality, in your municipality, and is affected by the outcomes. And you are all doing your part by being a stream keeper, and you have even more awareness because you're out there seeing and looking at what's going on in the streams in your neighborhood. And that's, you know, just doing that is critical and just great. And so I applaud all of you for being out there and doing that. So I think you've already, you know, hit that thing where you're already doing some of the things we really encourage. I'm just going to take a quick pause just to see if there's any questions from the group. I don't see any in the chat.
Could you
No.
talk a little bit more about what it's meant by the home rule charters?
Sure. Yeah. So it's a kind of a quirky, how do I want to put this? There is another local government sort of legal status, I will call it. And I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not an attorney, but I want to try to explain this. So home rule provides an extra sort of level of permission for some municipalities to do things that aren't aren't enabled through the different municipal codes. So it almost goes against what I had just been saying, how our municipalities can't do anything unless they're specifically enabled. If they have a home rule charter, they have options to do things that other municipalities that do not have that kind of charter are permitted to do. It's something that has to be voted and approved by the citizens. And so it's just another sort of layer of complexity for our local governments. And I don't have a real good explanation as to, how that happens, but it is a legal sort of status for certain municipalities. We can certainly, if you're curious, if your municipality is actually a home rule community, we can let you know that. One example that I can give you is we talk a lot about stormwater fees, and we try to encourage our communities to consider those as part of their stormwater management sort of finance options. And certain municipalities with home rules, like Philadelphia, can go ahead and develop a stormwater fee as part of their home rule permission, and certain municipalities can do that as well. But others need to follow the Municipal Authorities Act, where you would have to actually create a municipal authority before a fee program can be started. So that's just one example where the home rule provides that permission already. I don't know if I explained that very well, but it's just another level of complexity for our local governments.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great one. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to move on again. Please feel free to add any questions that you might have in the chat. We're going to talk about people now, people that you know and meet in the municipal government. And just to take a quick, this is almost a summary of what I just talked about, why it's important to educate our local elected officials about water resources. Well, again, what those decisions they make locally really do have an impact on our water quality. And as stream keepers, you can see that every day. And we also know that our watersheds and our water streams and tributaries don't stop when they get to the end of a municipal boundary. They go well beyond municipal boundaries. So things that we do in one municipality, decisions that are made, will have an impact downstream or upstream. So we also know that many of our municipalities, and pretty much all of them in our local Philly suburban area, are regulated under the Clean Water Act. They need a permit to discharge stormwater, and that's commonly known as the Ms4 permit. And that basically stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems. And that permit is something that all of our municipalities need to obtain in order to allow stormwater to run through its infrastructure that they have and discharge to our local streams. And also, it's just it's so important to have them recognize these long-term impacts of these land use decisions that they make. Again, once you allow a certain development pattern, it has an impact that goes well beyond the decision that they make that year, and so it's really important that we always continue to educate our elected officials about these kinds of decisions. And who are these officials? We just talked about the different types of elected officials, depending on whether you're a township or a city or borough. So we have our elected officials, and then we have appointed officials, and those are citizens like us that sit on boards and commissions. As I said, I mentioned I'm on the EAC in Abington. You might be a member of an EAC, you might be a member of the Planning Commission or a Zoning Hearing Board. These are all volunteer positions that are appointed by the local elected officials. And finally, with municipalities, there will be a professional staff in most cases. That might be the engineer, it might be a zoning officer, the manager might be will be a professional staff member, and they would be hired as staff for the municipality. And all those decisions on those hiring of these different professional staff, again, would need to be approved by the local elected officials. And finally, many of our municipalities do have contractors that may fill those positions. They may actually hire, for example, an engineer to be their municipal engineer, but they're not actually an employee of the municipality. So again, just something to understand if you're working with a local municipality, understand who who is looking at plans, who was, reviewing the zoning and land development plans and things like that. Okay, you can move on. So, and I had mentioned this with the previous slide. Again, municipal officials will vary by the class of the community that they're in. And this is just sort of showing that in a different illustration. Tali, I think you can move on. Okay. And this was, again, what I just talked about in terms of appointed officials, including everything from the planning commissions to shade tree commissions and zoning hearing boards. And these are various boards that advise their elected officials. And the professional staff that I had just talked about, again, the manager typically is the chief administrator. You might have again, an engineer and a zoning officer who really are the ones that look at those development plans and provide their comments, and they issue the permits. And some municipalities will have a Parks and Recreation department and a director for that. So again, just understanding how your local government works, who are the major decision makers, is always important. And again, as we mentioned earlier, some of these will sometimes be performed by contractors when they don't have the professional staff. If you are curious about your local government officials, there's actually a way to figure that out. This is a little, I guess I don't know what to call this. It's a way that you could actually put in your township and find out who the elected officials are and who the appointed officials are. And you can see here, this is on the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development website. There's the link. But if you're curious, you're not sure, this is one way to find out. Actually, I think the easiest way to find out who your local government officials are is to go to the website of your local government. But if you work in multiple areas, or you're just curious about maybe your county representatives or maybe the adjacent municipality, you can also go right to this, and it's this nice interactive way to find that out. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this section, we're going to talk a little bit about policies and plans used by the municipalities to guide development. And I'd like to mention these because these are typically where we find folks like you are most interested in sort of interacting. So let's go on to the next slide. So I talked a lot about enabling legislation. Here's the municipalities planning code. This is the planning sort of Bible for municipalities. This is what provides that power for them to plan and development. And there's just a lot of things in this. If you want something to read to send you to sleep, this is a really good document for that. But it really does provide lots of information about what municipalities, how municipalities plan and develop. And this is the sort of the planning Bible in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay, you can move on. So the other thing I think is really vital right now, and there's several of our communities in this region that are currently working on updating these. This is called the comprehensive plan, and it's really the blueprint for many things that happen in a community. It's a very open process. It's very the process is laid out in that municipality's planning code, and the comprehensive plan really does become the blueprint for how the community wants to see development. And what resources it values to protect, and what some of the policies are moving forward. Comprehensive plans can include things like energy and climate change issues. So it's a really important document to be familiar with. And so if you can be involved in any updates, that's probably a really great way for you to get involved locally, or just follow it on your township's website if they're doing updates. And if they don't have an update, you should be able to access a copy of that plan from the website. Okay, you can move on to the next. There's other plans that are typically prepared both at the local and county levels. I'm showing a couple examples here. Environmental resource inventories, which are very interesting. Again, highlighting valued resources that they may want to put extra protection on. And then, of course, there's many who prepare the open space recreation plans. Again, a critical document for identifying what's most valued in the community and taking sort of inventory of what's already there and trying to identify what might be missing. You can move on. Stormwater management plans. Again, these are usually prepared at the county level for the watersheds within the county. And they do spell out some very technical standards and criteria for managing stormwater locally. And when this is developed, an ordinance is developed, and that ordinance has to then be adopted by the municipalities within that particular watershed. So for the region here in suburban Philadelphia, all of our major watersheds, the TTF, the Wissahick, and the Pennypack all have these stormwater management plans, and each of them has very specific criteria that are then codified in each municipality within those watersheds. Okay, you can move on. Two very important regulatory documents that you should also be aware of. One is called the Saldo, Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance. It is the most commonly used land regulatory ordinance in the state of Pennsylvania. Two things to remember: a subdivision is the creation of a lot or changes to a property line, whereas land development refers to the actual construction of private or public improvements to land. Saldo sets that process and provides the standards for those lots. And so there's a lot of information in the Saldo that's very important for land development projects, but it sets, again, the process and the different criteria for all of the sort of subdivisions and land development in the community. You can move on to the next, which is the zoning. Again, another critical document that you, I'm sure, are familiar with. Zoning sets land use and intensity, and our municipal planning code does require general consistency between the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. So again, that comprehensive plan sets the guidelines and the sort of the municipal vision, and then zoning is the way to use some regulation to say, here's where we want residential, here's where we want commercial, here's where we want our land, our open space to be, here's the valuable lands that we want to protect. That can be regulated under zoning ordinances. So again, these are important documents. You know, you don't need to be, you don't have to know every single page, but they are something that you should be familiar with. You should be able to obtain them very easily through the municipal website. Many of them have links to their codes. So if you're curious, want to take a look at some of the things that are regulated, it's a really important document to be familiar with. Okay, I just went through a whole bunch of stuff very quickly, and I'm going to hand it back over to Tali to wrap up with I think probably one of the more important aspects of this presentation: understanding priorities.
Thanks, Sue. That was great. I swear I've heard this presentation like 4 or 5 times, and there's always something new that Sue points out or an example she gives. And I'm also always inspired to actually take action locally. So I'm going to talk a little bit less of the technical things and a little bit more of talking a little bit about priorities and values and aligning those. So I will advance my own slides, and if I forget, remind me, Sue, that I haven't advanced the slide yet. So we are going to talk a little bit about local government priorities, limitations, challenges, perspectives. But one of the things that we have often say, and I don't know that we've really said it a lot, is that, you know, sometimes we can feel a little bit intimidated, both by kind of understanding that complex structure, or maybe even a little intimidated by somebody that's an elected or an appointed official. I know that I have been. I once found myself in the room with somebody who was running for commissioner, and I was totally tongue-tied, which, if you know me at all, I mean, that hardly ever happens. I just was like, oh, what do you say to the commissioner? So we try to remind everyone that your local municipal official is just another person, right? They're another person in your community that likely finds something remarkable about the quality of life where you all live. And they've just decided to take it upon themselves to engage at a slightly higher level. And they are probably most likely truly trying to do the best they can with the limited resources, time, funds, and capacities that a lot of our municipalities are facing. So local government priorities, what are they? What do we wish they were, maybe? And what are they tend to be? So a lot of studies have been done, research by consultants. It happened to be in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, but I'm certain that it's true across the board, to sort of assess the general and specific trends in local government priorities. And like I said, they might change based on geography, current events, obviously COVID threw, a very large wrench into a lot of local government priorities. There could be very ultra local concerns and issues, but generally it's a good idea to keep in mind that it's these priorities that drive the decisions of your appointed and elected officials, their actions, their decisions, how they define their budget. So some of those priorities are constituent needs and support. So generally officials are concerned about what their constituents want and will make decisions based on where they feel the momentum is heading in a particular situation. So sometimes it might not be their personal decision, but they will make choices based on what they feel their constituents want. Occasionally, though, it might happen that an elected official is kind of out of touch with what the constituents want, and maybe it's your job to get a handle on that and to work to convey to that local official, listen, there's a lot of people in this community that feel strongly about this issue or that issue, and it doesn't seem to really be in line with some decisions that you've been making lately. And that's definitely a role that you can play. Like everybody else, municipal officials have a budget to balance, and they need to be balanced, they need to be approved. Generally, municipal officials want to save money, and they want to save money up front and be able to talk about how they did so. And so if there is some change that needs to be made or some project or initiative that you're hoping a municipal official or an entity or a board will take, and a big upfront investment is being asked of them, there needs to be a pretty convincing argument that there's going to be long-term, short-term, long-term return on environment. And sometimes even that, return on investment. We'll talk about return on environments, but that's later. And even that can be a tough sell, trying to convince someone that, yes, this is going to cost money up front, but studies have shown that over 20 years, we're going to save this amount of money. Even that can be a tough sell. But concrete examples of maybe how that initiative has worked elsewhere, might be something that will help you make your case. And local government officials may very well care about re-election. And when it comes to re-election, that means they need to look good in the media. They need to look good in social media. They need to look good to whoever they report to and to their constituents. So, it might be helpful to give a public recognition or accolade for a local official that has done something on behalf of a resource that you are in support of, or a decision that you think they made that was the right decision. So support them, promote them, thank them, because that helps them get reelected. So we'll talk a little bit more about local government priorities. And to be perfectly honest, it's those immediate concerns that show immediate impacts from decisions that are made. So things like infrastructure, as Sue said, roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. It could be things like healthcare, education, crime, taxable, rateables, growth, development, social services. And unfortunately, similar studies to the ones I mentioned before have found that when asked about watershed health and even water quality, it tends to be less of a priority than the concerns that you see listed here. And that could be for various reasons. Watershed health could seem more abstract, less clear. Susan tried to make the case to you that land use decisions and all those various planning documents have an impact, that they have the authority to make decisions to protect water quality, but they themselves might not necessarily recognize the connection between those types of decisions and watershed health and water quality. So one of your roles could be to identify where and how these immediate concerns and some of the concerns related to watershed health, water quality, fantastic angling opportunities, whatever it is that's meaningful to you, how those things interact with their immediate concerns. And we'll talk about that now. And so I think we have another poll coming up, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to talk a little bit about values and concerns. So when you think about your community, what do you think about? What do you most value or most adore? And then what are some of your top concerns about what's happening in your community or your watershed? So I know Erin said she might be slightly distracted by, oh, there she is. Not too distracted to launch our poll. So,
Yes, I'm here.
okay. So yeah, this is just a question. Again, if you just want to take a few minutes, it's multiple choice. You can select your top 2 or 3. But what are some of the things that you really appreciate about your community? And again, you can slide the gray bar up and down to select some answers. I live in a small college town in otherwise rural Pennsylvania, and I definitely love our walkability. I live downtown. I have easy access to many businesses and amenities. I certainly feel that it's safe. So I know that I would be checking off a lot of these boxes. And again, we've done this presentation in a number of different geographies. So obviously you might not be living in a particularly rural area. I can understand that. So yeah, great schools. Yeah. So, these are the reasons that you live there. And it's important to keep this in mind because it's very likely it's the same reasons that your decision makers are living there. And sometimes you probably just have to remind them what kind of powers they themselves hold to keep these values intact. So I think you can probably, it looks like most people have finished answering. So we can probably just stop sharing and share the results real quick.
Oh, yes. So everyone answered. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And I think, are the results being shared now?
Yes, I think they are. Sorry. Sometimes
Okay, perfect.
I think I missed the switch from one to the other.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the same things. I obviously listed some really wonderful things there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And someone in the chat said history is another thing that they value.
I love it. I'm going to put a little plug in here. Power did a webinar with a really phenomenal researcher who was linking river histories with current conservation goals. So if you're interested, you can go to Power's website, and under a 10-minute event, we have our recorded webinars. And I think that was one of my favorite webinars. Okay. So one of the things that I try to encourage people to think about is how local priorities and concerns of your local government officials can actually be very closely aligned with what we consider more along the line of watershed and water resource conservation values. So where are some places that these two could overlap? Well, let's say, for example, that what you really care about is open space for passive recreation. Well, studies have shown that proximity to green space and recreational areas actually increases housing values. And providing these amenities, open space, parks, passive recreation areas, can boost local businesses who cater to outdoor enthusiasts. And that could be anything from a coffee shop to an outfitter, to hotels, restaurants, etc. So, that's a way to make the case for maybe an open space referendum or something similar to that, that it's very closely related to economic gains in your community. So some studies have shown, for example, that incidents of crime are lower in well-designed and maintained parks with open space than the ones with less green open space. So a couple slides ago, there was a picture, Sue gave the example of how local governments can make decisions about how their parks are designed. And if you're looking for a decision or funding or some sort of action to take on an old dilapidated playground that's mostly gray, cracking, basketball courts that no one really uses anymore, that's a case that could be made. But, lowering incidents of crime in open green spaces, trees, shady areas, etc. So I know this is a little bit different for the audience here, but one example I give is that there are people who value amazing trout streams and angling opportunities, and they want clean water and stream banks that aren't being eroded. But sometimes it's hard to make the case to a municipal official like, hey, we need to take care of our eroding stream banks because sediment is smothering our macroinvertebrates. Like they're going to say like, I don't really care about the bugs if they even know what macroinvertebrates are, right? But I don't think a lot of municipal officials want to see downstream damage to their culverts and bridges. And if you can make the case that eroding stream banks also causes trees and other debris to enter your stream and makes its way downstream in a major flood and has the chance and potential to take out a local bridge, you might be able to make the case that way. So that's just some examples. There are many others, but I'm just trying to get you kind of thinking about approaching these people and making the connections between what they really care about and what you really care about. Because we have a little bit of extra time, I'm going to go into just a couple things here. There was one other neat example that was also based on some research, again, kind of connecting the education component. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with just the positive impacts of outdoor learning, nature-based places for learning. I mean, there are all kinds of benefits to cognitive development, improved grades. And so you can definitely make the case that open spaces that allow themselves to maybe become outdoor classrooms are going to boost education outcomes. So that's actually one of my favorite kind of approaches to this. And I just wanted to mention that. So just talking about if you are going to attend a public meeting, a public hearing, this is pretty straightforward and pretty obvious, but we can also get really excited and really impassioned and really frustrated sometimes. And, we might sometimes put our etiquette and our good upbringing and politeness, that could kind of get away from us when we're really passionate. And so we just wanted to just give reminders about the best way to approach a public meeting, even in a very contentious situation. Being prepared, having the agenda, knowing which items you want to address, knowing how to get on the agenda. Sometimes there's very specific things that can be talked about in these meetings. And if you're not on the agenda, you might still have an opportunity to engage during like the public comment. But, reach out to your secretary or somebody in your municipality and get a sense of when meetings are scheduled, when agendas need to be finalized so that you can get on it if there's a topic you want to talk about. And again, this is mostly when we're going back to in-person meetings, arrive early, sign in, use your time wisely, be concise if you are invited, when you're invited to speak, and regardless, be polite and respectful. I try to remember even when I'm dealing with my own kids, when yelling at someone, raising your voice, that only puts people on the defensive, and nobody learns, nobody is open to a new idea when they're feeling threatened. And that's what happens when voices are raised, or you're, it's important to be impassioned, but to continue to be polite and respectful. And if there is something happening that you disagree with, you're more than welcome to just state, what matters to you and why you disagree with maybe a decision that's being made. But it's also really helpful to have a solution or a recommended action and not just a complaint. So those are just some best management practices. So this slide has a lot of content on it, a lot of text. So I'm gonna kind of have them float in so you're not overwhelmed. So tips for your communications when you are interacting with local officials. Use plain language, ask pointed but polite questions, avoid long speeches. Remember that you might be really well educated in the topic that you're talking about, but your municipal official might not be. And again, focus on values. There's this really great organization, consulting firm called Water Words That Work. And they talk a lot about the words that resonate with almost everyone. And those are things like clean water for all, clean flowing water, attractive and open spaces. So we like to say, think of words that like an 8th grader would understand and make a connection to. So again, I kind of said this before, but choose explanations that make sense to everyone. So high sediment loads can suffocate our macroinvertebrates, might just go right over the head of some of your municipal officials. But if you say something like silty, murky waters threaten our world-class fishing opportunities and the tourist revenue that come with it, that's going to be something that might make a little bit more sense. Again, eroding stream banks increase sediment and nutrient loading. Like people are gonna be like, nutrients, yay, isn't that good? But in our streams, it's not, right? So when stream banks erode, trees and other debris fall into the water, threaten bridges, culverts, and infrastructure, right? Because they care about infrastructure. You're getting the idea here, but impervious surface, a word that you and I probably are very familiar with, other people maybe not so much. But again, crime decreases in outdoor spaces with natural landscapes. And again, the idea is, another idea is that sometimes it really helps to bring in someone who is being personally affected by a decision to make the case on their behalf. This again comes from Water Words That Works. This is just one little piece of research that they did that they showed that rural decision makers tend to prefer images that show on the ground river protection. They're not really swayed by, look, this is bad, we don't want this, but they're more swayed with, here's what our community can look like. Urban decision makers, they like to see people getting involved, taking action, getting their feet wet and their hands dirty. This was just one little piece of research that was done, but thought I would share it. I thought it was interesting. So real quickly, it's not always easy to find ourselves in the position of educating our local officials. And even, we need to be careful a little bit with our language. We want to share our ideas with, we want to promote a better understanding. Sometimes people can take offense at, saying like, I'm here to like educate you or whatever, but we just kind of use that, but just kind of, again, be aware of your language. So these are challenges because the municipal officials, they have a full plate, right? They have limited time, limited resources. They might be doing this voluntarily in their spare time. There's a lot of competing issues for their attention. There's also legal mandates. Like there's things that they just have to do and they feel like they have to do it in a certain way. And you can support them in that, but explain that there are other ways to go about meeting those legal requirements. Short-term versus, so there's term limits. A lot of times that leads to very short-term views, right? They want to see something successful. They want to see something they can hang their hat on by the time they're done with their term. And if you're talking about something that is going to need, a long-term investment, that's going to be a little bit hard that somebody's going to be able to say like, I need to get this done in 2 years. What am I going to see in 2 years? Understanding cause and effect and cumulative impacts, complexity of environmental issues. I mean, people go to like undergraduate, master's degrees, PhDs to understand some of these issues, right? And so it can just seem complex and overwhelming. And sometimes it's just easier to make a decision that's like, bang, gonna bring in like some new ratables and make an impact on their community. So these are complex issues and they take a long time to learn and understand. And sometimes that can be make it a challenge to share these ideas with your elected officials. Overcoming barriers and challenges to meaningful engagement. And this is a slide that I came up using my own experiences and my own feelings on this. I'm not as active as I'd like to be for all the reasons I'm going to present here. And so we totally understand if you feel this way. But we're hoping that maybe we can give you just a few things to make you take a deep breath and say, you know what, I got this. So maybe you feel like I just talked about how complex these issues are. Maybe you feel like I'm not going to go to a public meeting. I'm going to not voice. I mean, I don't know the science. I don't have the data. I might use the wrong word. I'll be laughed at because I once remembered I couldn't say the word. I have no idea how to spell eutrophication and I said it all wrong. But it doesn't really matter, right? It's not about how much technical knowledge you have. First of all, you probably have way more than you think. You very likely have more than the person you're talking to, and you don't always have to share the complex science. Sometimes it's enough, like I said, to just share your values and your concerns and what you love about your community and why you think the proposal is going to impact those and how you personally are going to be impacted. Maybe you feel you don't have the time to go to public meetings. They can be time consuming. You have to put them on your calendars. You got kids at home, you got softball games and baseball games and who knows what else. However, that meaningful engagement can actually happen at that soccer team, at that soccer game. As I said, these people are living in your community. Maybe they're raising children in the same community that you are. And you may just find yourself next to your commissioner or one of your elected officials at a game. Talk about what's important to you when you're interacting with people. I get intimidated. I'm not sure what to say or how to say it. I feel that way. I teach this, right? And I know I feel this way. Again, I've said this before, but everyone's just working together to try to make your community a better place. So just share what you love about it. There's a lot here, right? You could have issue after issue after issue. We're inundated with bad news. We're inundated by having to make decisions, having to make our case, but you know, the idea is if you feel that way, choose one thing that you're most passionate about and then encourage others to join you and support you at a meeting. Look for a local civic organization that might share your views too. Ask them to support you. You know, there's a lot of tools and resources and partners right where you live. A few other things, right? A lot of people say, and we have this going on in my community right now, and it was a bit of a disappointment. You know, you say, well, aren't the big developers going to get their way anyway? I mean, so many of those meetings happen behind closed doors. I don't even find out about it until it's too late. But you know what? Land use policies and regulations have to be followed by everyone, as long as someone is watching. So if no one shows up at these meetings, if nobody says anything, if nobody reminds your municipality that there's a comprehensive plan, that there's a stormwater plan, that there's an inventory of green spaces, yeah, those things are going to get approved without anybody saying anything about it. You know, these exist for a reason and they have to be followed. And you could say, well, you know, where we live, my community needs investments in economic growth and development. So maybe I shouldn't oppose something new going in my town, a new warehouse, a new development, a new supermarket, whatever it might be. That's true, but economic growth and development does not have to come at the expense of conservation and resource depletion. Those are not mutually exclusive things, and they can happen positively together for your community. And I don't know a ton about these, although I have read a few, been involved in a couple of them, but I'm probably not going to be able to answer all of your questions. But somebody asked that I mention this newly released economic impact of protected open space in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. These are known as return on environment studies. They've been done in a lot of different regions in Pennsylvania. Many have been done along what's known as the Kittatinny Ridge communities, but also other counties. And I am stealing a little bit of this slide from, I'll give her credit, a woman named Jean Ortiz gave a presentation at one of our 3-part webinars, and she talked about return on environment. And she asked basically, what is one of those studies? Like, what is it actually calculating? And basically, if you can think about it this way, what if Mother Nature were to give us an invoice for all of the services and benefits that she provides for us? What would that look like? And one of the reasons that people do return on environments is because when people think about the value of nature, it's kind of it's either thought about as being like, whatever, like there's no value, it's just kind of there, right? So it seems to go on this thing from like 0 to infinity, or people will think about like, oh, how could we even possibly begin to calculate the benefits of nature and nature space and open spaces and things like that? It's like, it's uncalculable, right? So it's like, it might as well be infinity. We can't even talk about it. So basically what these return on environment studies does is they try to calculate nature's worth using monetary numbers that can be compared and contrasted to other impacts or other economic proposals for economic improvement or projects. And when we talk about nature's worth, we're talking about natural system services, so water quality filtering that's done, say, in wetlands. We're talking about the value of outdoor recreation. I talked about that a little bit, but if you were to calculate all the money spent when people come to your area to recreate outdoors, trust me, it's way, way more than just the price of a pair of sneakers. the reduced healthcare costs of people being outside, of getting fresh air, of exercising, mental health benefits of all those kinds of things. And they find a way to put to do an economic analysis of reduced healthcare costs in places that have high amounts of outdoor opportunities. Home and property values, I mentioned that they increase with green space. What kind of jobs are created when it comes to outdoor spaces, open space and tourism. And then this is just one of the values that I kind of took right out of that Montgomery County impact return on environment study. So again, that is just really demonstrating that there are costs associated with what we get. There are financial benefits that we get from all of these values that are so important to you. So with that, I'm done. And we'll take questions. In the chat, or probably unmute yourself with this small group. I don't know. I don't want to make the rules.
Thank you so much, Tali and Sue. Yeah, I think if you two are okay with it, folks can unmute to ask a question or put them in the chat. That's fine.
Or you could just give us accolades for the next 10 minutes. I'm just kidding. No, this is our pleasure. We love doing this.
Yeah, and it's hard. There's a lot of detail that we, you know, I sometimes there's so many things I could say and I kind of don't. And so, you know, please feel free to ask questions even if you don't think you think it's silly or something, because it's that we have a very complex local government. They're creatures of the state. So the state basically provides this sort of way that they have to function, what they can do and can't do. And so it's just a very complicated sort of way of governance in our state. And understanding that is like one of the ways that you can at least figure out how your community works. I saw something here in the chat. Let me see if that's oh, thank you, Brandy.
So we have another chat question that says, kind of off topic, but have you noticed tree loss within the Cantu, primarily uprooting?
Means county, right? Are you talking about the county?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That would make sense.
Tree loss. You know, gosh, I can't really answer that question. I know some folks on our Shade Tree Commission that could probably answer that question because they're really, really on top of these things. I think it is an issue. You know, we are losing tree canopy when there's development and people are taking trees down, obviously. And many of our local communities do have tree ordinances, or they have tree replacement measures as well. But I see Deborah has her hand raised, so I'm going to be quiet and see. Deb, do you want to?
I do. If you don't want to go to a public meeting, whether it's a zoning hearing, do you want to address anything about writing short letters stating the issue, potential resolution to your local official versus going to their office to talk with staff? Do you want to address that, or is that not appropriate for this conversation? Thanks.
No, that's a great question. Actually, you know, I was just thinking as you were talking, one of the things that you can do is, you know, talk to your local elected official who represents your part of your community. I can talk to you from my perspective in Abington, where we have 15 different commissioners. My ward commissioner, I am very well, he's a neighbor. And so if I have an issue or concern, I feel pretty comfortable reaching out. Many of our commissioners have like newsletters that they send out to their constituents as well. So, you know, I think it's very appropriate to send a note or a letter if that's how you'd like to express yourself. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think they actually probably would value that. You know, if you want to say, hey, I have an idea and submit it to them, that would, I think that's a great way to put forth your opinion. And I would say that most elected officials would like something like that.
I live in Philadelphia, so our elected officials are pretty busy.
Got it. Okay.
Um,
All right.
and they have their own agenda. So what I normally try to do is speak with the appropriate staff member
Mhm.
briefly, and then ask them if I could send them a follow-up letter. There are times where I will send a letter to the editor or an opinion in the tiny local neighborhood newspaper.
Right.
And then I'll share it with my watershed, or whoever is the appropriate group that I'm trying to represent on a particular topic. So I don't know if that helps in rural or townships or boroughs.
I think what I'm hearing is kind of, you know what the system is and who you should be talking to. That's really critical. I think that's what the point we were trying to make is try to understand who you should talk to and how those decisions are made. Philadelphia is obviously a little bit different than a rural township. But again, I thought your example was great. You have access to a particular staff person. That's maybe the best way to get your opinion out there. And that's, I think that's a really important for everyone to hear. Every place is a bit unique. So, but I like that you shared that, Deb, because I think the method that you described, I think is spot on. Tali, would you agree with that? I just,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I know I like it so much. I want to add it to the slide deck so that we mention it
can
next
we
time.
use that as an example? We do like to interject with actual examples because I think it's really important for, not just to listen to Tali and I, and we'd like to hear those stories. We try to put as much case studies and examples as we can. Okay, I see some other hands. Who else? Brandy? Sure. You can unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Deb's point a little bit, just because I work for a second-class township. And I know that the way that we like to do it in our particular municipality is to have it funnel through the township manager. So as Deb noted, the council members, or the board of supervisors rather, sorry, that's boroughs, are not always accessible. So we funnel those correspondences through the township manager, who then shares them with the board of supervisors. And that can also go through a staff level member to the manager and so on. But typically it's easier just to contact the manager or send a letter, which will eventually get to the manager, who will then give it to the supervisors.
All right, thank you. That's great. Deborah, I see your hand still up.
Yeah, the other thing that I do before I contact here in Philadelphia, our city council staff member, I will call Julia, the watershed, and talk with one of the staffers at my watershed to find out what their slant is, what I should or should not say, what language they want me to use, so that it ties in or it supports what my watershed is trying to do, because the watershed has significantly more oomph and power. And I want to be, and I recognize that I'm an added voice, but I'm not the end all and be all. The watershed is a far more powerful political activist. So, and I do the same before I write anything to our little local newspaper. I'll send them a draft and say, I'm thinking of sending this, edit away, tell me what, to add, delete. So, and I'm assuming that can be done at different levels outside of the city, because all elected officials, I'm sorry, I'm going to be very prejudiced, have an ego. And you do have to appeal to their sense of what they're trying to accomplish and their general level of importance.
Yeah, great points, Deb. Thanks for sharing that. I'm thinking you're in the TTF, because I'm just gonna. And so I hear you, and I think it's great that you're reaching out to speak to the watershed organization, because it's nice that there's a consistent, message, and that, you know, we work with a lot of watershed organizations across the state, and I'm sure Tali will interject. And that is great, because it is a voice for the watershed as a whole. And watershed groups typically have that sort of more, they can have that holistic sort of look at the whole area. And just to use the TTF as an example, it starts up in the suburbs, it starts in Cheltenham and Abington, and then goes through several municipalities before it enters into the city. So, there's a upstream, downstream sort of dynamic, and that's very similar for other watersheds in our region here, but also throughout the state, where we have those sort of multiple multiple jurisdictions, and you really got to work together to achieve sort of the goals and objectives so that the watershed health is protected. So I really appreciate that, your insight and comments on that. Let's see, any other questions that you might have? We have a few minutes.
Yeah, thanks for your attention. I know it's getting kind of late in the evening, but we're really glad that you joined us and stuck with us. And, I do hope that this was some little message or takeaway or aha moment there in this past hour and a half.
Yeah, I actually have a question, but this has been wonderful so far. And thanks for the participation, everyone. It's much appreciated. Yeah, this is my son here. So when I started getting interested in governance, I just started attending municipal meetings, and I knew nothing. So I learned a ton by just going to my municipality. And I didn't say anything. I would just sit in the back and listen to what went on. So, but one thing that came up as I was going to these meetings, my council members sometimes would mention something about a sunshine law or the Sunshine Act, and how that related to what needed to be public and promoted, I think, to the public. And occasionally my municipality has like closed door sessions. And I'm curious how that is regulated, or like what implication that Sunshine Act has on what is public and promoted, and what legally can be discussed behind closed doors.
Oh, tough question. I don't think I even want to touch that, but I will tell you, again, please understand, I am not an attorney, and I don't want to provide any kind of a legal opinion here. I think the sunshine laws are something that you can actually look up and understand, what's considered, confidential. That I think things like, discussions about personnel and things like that. But there's again, I don't want to misstate anything, but it's an interesting question, Erin. I would, and I think, it might be interesting, Tali, maybe we should think about having a little session on that, perhaps bring in folks that actually, are very familiar with how that works, and what can and can't be discussed at a public meeting. Erin, I can give you a quick example about how I understand it as a member of the Environmental Advisory Council in our township. We have 7 members, and we can't really make decisions if there's 4 of us together. It's considered a quorum, so we can't meet that way. So it has to be open and advertised and that kind of thing. So there's rules, but I can't really give you I'm certainly not qualified to provide a sort of legal definition of what's allowed and what's not allowed, but we can certainly do some investigation though.
Yes, and Erin, it looks like one of your, it looks like Brandy might have an answer from another training that she took.
Yes, I saw
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful, Brandy. I just put my email in the chat too. Yeah, thank you, Sue. That's a tough question.
Yeah, and Brandy, I didn't realize they actually had training on that. Thanks for letting us know. Yep, that's great.
Any other last questions? If not, we can wrap it up. And I want to thank Tali and Sue so much for doing this. This has been wonderful. I learned a lot.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, we're getting some thanks in the chat.
Yeah, and I did put my email in there. The full 3-part, each one is an hour-and-a-half long session. There's case studies, guest speakers. Some of it will overlap. We've took material from all 3 sessions to put into this 1 hour, plus. But if you want access to all 3, we recorded them and they're available. But it's a closed YouTube thing, so I just have to send you the link. But yeah, be happy to share if anybody wants to contact us.
Yeah, there's a little more detail on like the planning parts and what to comment on, how to, what the different zoning variances and special exceptions are. So there's a little more detail about all of it, that sort of stuff if you're interested. So, yeah, feel free to, Tali can send you those links for those presentations.
And I will send this recording out to all those that registered. So look for that.
Yeah, thanks.